Welcome back to The Real Truth. I'm Tommy Spina. Today I'm joined by Representative Phillip Ensler. He wears many hats, but one of the hats he's hoping to wear come November and January is the hat of the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Alabama. Welcome to the show, Phillip.
Thank you, Tommy. It's great to be on and an honor to be a guest.
You have done a number of things, and I do want to educate people on that in your career. Um, I know you're a civil rights lawyer. You're a former public school teacher. You're one of the leading, I think you're the executive director of the Jewish Federation of Central Alabama. Um, what is it that a lieutenant governor does?
Sure. No, great question. And yeah, you got my background right. After college, my first job was a teacher here in Montgomery Public Schools. I then went to law school and have been a member of the Alabama Bar since 2017, and then went on to run for the state legislature. And yeah, now running for a lieutenant governor. And the lieutenant governor does a few things. So one, presides over the state Senate. So the lieutenant governor literally sits there up in the state Senate and somewhat plays the role of referee during debates. The legislature has since taken away a lot of the formal authority of the lieutenant governor. So it's a little bit more ceremonial as far as the presiding officer part of it. But the lieutenant governor does have a lot of appointments to different state boards and commissions. And then the part, though, that I would focus most on is having a policy portfolio and really speaking up and advocating for issues that matter to the people of Alabama, issues that are going to help improve people's lives. And because I've been in the legislature, I would use the role to work with the senators that I know and have relationships with, and work with them to try to, have them introduce bills, and then work with them to try to get them passed. And we can get more into those. But everything, from dealing with affordable health care to helping people pay their bills to supporting public education, there's so many things that I would advocate and try to work with the legislature to get passed.
I noticed in preparing for this interview that you spent some time, as you just mentioned, as a former teacher at a school in Montgomery. Are you still involved in the Appleseed project, by the way?
I'm not. So I worked at Appleseed for a few years after law school, and absolutely loved it. And I'm still in touch with them. But because they're a nonprofit, they have to stay out of partisan politics as they advocate. But I interact with them at the legislature. Their team is often there, and they're doing great work, particularly when it comes to our trying to improve our prison system and prison conditions, and having a fair and just system. So I even though I no longer work there, I've certainly worked with them and work on some of their priorities.
And I know from your teaching experience, education must be a priority for you.
It is, and I have a tremendous passion for working with young people. I when I was teaching in 2012, I started a program to bring students of mine from Montgomery to Washington, D.C. Many of my students had rarely left Montgomery, or rarely had been on, or if ever had been on, an airplane. So I started a program, and I still lead it every year, where we bring a group of 11th graders up to D.C. and expose them to colleges and to Capitol Hill, and of course go to museums and the monuments. And it's interesting, for all the times we've been to the National Mall and the reflecting pool. I didn't think the reflecting pool would ever get so much attention that it's been getting these last couple days and weeks. But on a more serious note, I mean, it's incredible to see and see young people from Montgomery, up in DC, and we every year meet with, different leaders, and they advocate for issues they care about. So public education is a very important issue to me. And look, as someone that was in the classroom, I know firsthand what teachers go through, and it's so important that we support them and support them with good pay and good benefits. And it's so important that we invest in our young people and make sure that there are good public schools, in every zip code, in every area. Families shouldn't have to choose between, do they send their kid to an expensive private school because they don't think it's a good public school in the area. Every public school should be high quality.
Yeah, Birmingham has really turned around its school system in a very short time under the guidance of Randall Woodfin and his efforts to focus on education. And I'm real proud of that he's done that. Somehow, some way, you managed to flip a Republican seat in 2022 uh, in your district. That is pretty hard to do in Alabama. And here again, you're trying to do the same thing, except at a different level. And running for the lieutenant governor spot, of course, you'll be overseeing lots of boards and appointments and things of that nature. But I noticed that you are wanting to help eliminate the grocery tax, possibly even get engaged in opening or creating a state lottery. So let's just start with the grocery tax. If the grocery tax goes away, what happens? What replaces that revenue? And how would you go about uh, phasing that in without blowing up the budget?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, it's, to your initial point that flipping a district here in Montgomery for the state house, I know what it takes to do that, and it certainly takes a lot of work, but it takes talking about issues that appeal to people on both sides of the aisle, and the grocery tax is one of those. I certainly am mindful, and I think it's a great question about making sure that we have a way to replace the revenue. I will say that the reason it's so important to completely cut the grocery tax is that for working class families, it is such a regressive tax. The few dollars, that get added on to every time they go to the grocery store, those few dollars add up, and that's money that could be used to help, pay for another gallon of gas to be able to get to work. It's a few dollars that, could be used to help, pay their electrical bill and power bill, which, was a huge challenge these days. So from a standpoint of providing relief and helping particularly working class and lower income people, that's why it's so important. I think one way we could replace the revenue is with a state lottery. And, it depends kind of what the lottery and overall gaming, what passes. But on the low end, it would bring in, estimates show anywhere from $300 to $400 million, if not more. And that's one revenue stream. But I think in general, Alabama relies a lot on regressive taxes and on things that are hurting working people. And we have to look at ways to certainly replace the revenue without hurting the budgets. But things that are not going to be so overly burdensome on working people.
Well, we came close to getting a lottery bill passed. And my friend from St. Clair County put the brakes on it because he didn't like who benefited from it. So how would you structure it so that the bottom 20%, let's say, of earners end up being the net winners through scholarships or health funding or just direct relief rather than just another revenue stream for Montgomery?
Sure.
And if you can work into that, do we have a plan B if the grocery tax stalls? So the lottery could be, if the lottery, if the grocery tax goes away, and the lottery doesn't fill the gap, what's the plan? Uh, how would you address that? I guess is a better way of asking that question.
Sure. Yeah. As far as the revenue, yes, I think it absolutely should, benefit, those that are lower income and those that, need it, need the support the most. And I think the point of college scholarships, whether it's for a 4-year college, a 2-year college, a technical trade, I proposed a clean lottery last year, meaning that it would give voters a chance to vote on just the lottery without the other gaming options. And the thought was that if you have just the lottery without the other aspects, that maybe that would be easier to pass and more straightforward. I certainly do support other gaming and gambling options as a way to also bring in revenue and have different economic development within the state. But all that to say that yeah, I think going for the revenue going towards college scholarships, particularly for those that are most in need, would be important. I proposed that the part of the revenue also be used to send rebate checks to working class families. So people who, are having the hardest time paying their bills, then even if they got just a few $100s in a rebate check, that can make a big difference. It would be ideal to cut the grocery tax and have a new revenue stream. If we were to cut the grocery tax and the lottery didn't go through, I think the state would have to look at cutting funds from another area to offset it and do the most fiscally smart thing. And I know it's as someone who thinks that investing in public infrastructure and public education and public health, is all so important. So I wouldn't want to cut from the budget in ways that would hurt the community. But I think taking a very close look at the budget and saying, well, where can we maybe cut something that, wouldn't necessarily be that harmful, or something, maybe there are subsidies that are going to private companies and industry that the government shouldn't be subsidizing, through the state budget. That may be one way to look at it without inflicting harm.
To shift gears, thank you for that, by the way. But shifting gears, healthcare, another one of my pet peeves that I think that gets overlooked on every level, especially from a criminal defense lawyer's perspective, and that is mental health, coupled with healthcare. I know you, as well as Doug Jones, support Medicaid expansion. It's sort of been a political football for years. Are you skeptical that Republicans will never go for that, for expanding Medicaid?
Yeah, it is extremely disappointing, frustrating that they haven't in all these years, and it really is a matter of people's lives and people's health. I don't think that means that we don't continue to try, and unfortunately, the continued closure of rural hospitals is becoming even more of an issue, where Republicans are feeling it even in their districts. And my hope is that I hate that it is taking hospitals closing, but I hope that is waking people up and getting them thinking about that Medicaid expansion. It's not some crazy, left program. It's not just some government handout. It is a very reasonable approach to helping working class people with health insurance. It's something that would not cost the state a whole lot. For those who argue that the state can't afford it, the percentage, about the 10% that the state is responsible for, studies have shown that would pay for itself, because if the state took in the federal Medicaid expansion dollars and then hospitals stayed open and doctors were employed and nurses and janitors and office staff, those people then would be earning income and employed and spending money in the economy, and that 10% that the state would have to pay for would essentially pay for itself. So any of the fiscal arguments are nonsense, but it is I can't think of anything more humane and more needed than supporting healthcare, for people, and that's again not a Democrat or Republican issue. So it's really really disheartening, to say the least, that they haven't. I know it is challenging to change hearts and minds in Montgomery, but I've done it in my current role. I've been able to get tough things passed, and certainly with Doug as governor, feel that we can really push and get it done.
I ran into a person I was speaking with yesterday. Of course, being a resident of Birmingham, I take for granted the fact that we have a building for every organ in your body 15 minutes away from my house. What I learned yesterday was a gentleman had a heart issue, and where he lived was he wouldn't have survived if he had to drive to Birmingham. So making doctors and therapists available either via telehealth without having to drive hours, people need to think about, and I don't think they do. But hopefully, if we could get Medicaid expansion in place, it would get those people to a place where they could be treated quicker with good medical care. Particularly, this person was having a heart attack. He would never made it to Birmingham. So, how about teachers and staff pay? We need to raise and recruit and retain better people. How big of an increase do you think is necessary to move the needle, and where does that money come from?
Yeah, another great question, and I fully support increasing teacher and education employee pay. I mean, there are a lot of people, I certainly know this firsthand from when I taught that the support staff in the buildings, even the janitors, the bus drivers. I mean, everyone plays a role in the system of supporting our young people and helping pour into them and help, us have good schools. I don't know, a number off the top of my head. I forget, what, kind of in the last few years, teachers have advocated for, but I certainly support, whatever would make us competitive with some of the other states that have the highest, salaries for teachers. And, I say this because it's not enough to just pay lip service to thanking them for their service and telling them that they're heroes. I mean, sure, the verbal affirmation is feels good, but we need to back that on the state level with good pay, with good benefits, good retirement. I mean, I've talked to retired teachers throughout the state when I travel, and I'm in a different county every day. I mean, retired teachers who are struggling to retire and live with dignity after putting in, 30, 40, 50 years of serving young people. So we have to make sure we think about and take care of the retirees as well. And, if you want to recruit and retain some of the best, you have to put the money into it. And it's like any field that, the pay does make a difference. And when young people are deciding, especially when they have student loan debt, if they're going to go into a public service job, or public sector, or if they're going to go the private route, understandably, they have to look at the pay. So, again, how we pay for it is another great question. And I know we certainly don't want to, raise taxes on people in the state. But I think that, the lottery, if done right, could be part of that. But we also have to look at, again, if the state is giving dollars, I think one way to really do it is money that may be going to private entities, or tax breaks, tax incentives that are going to private industries. Look, I'm all for it, and we absolutely need economic development. But there are companies who don't need that government handout to operate. And if we cut some of that, and use that to pay teachers, I think that would be a much better use of taxpayer dollars.
You got a timeline in mind that you're willing to own of getting us for a parent whose children are in a failing school system, uh, to get them up to speed to basic competence in terms of turning that around.
Yeah, I mean, look, every school district is in a different situation, and so the role that the state plays, and certainly as lieutenant governor, I mean, I can partner with the State Department of Education. I can work with the superintendent and others to try to get resources and get support. I'm hesitant to give a time commitment because I know every district is different, but we have to treat it with a sense of urgency and treat it. It is an emergency. It is something that can't wait, and we have to do it, with all hands on deck and with an extreme sense of urgency to turn it around as quickly as we can.
Well, just thinking out loud about what I see coming out of Washington, there seems to be no dialogue on either side of the aisle. I don't see the Republicans starting to see some as recent as this past week, but I don't see them talking to each other, let alone talking to the other side of the aisle. And I think that goes for both parties, really. Uh, do you see that divisiveness at the state level that we see looking up to Washington, D.C., or is there a little more cohesiveness or a willingness to work together for a common good in the state of Alabama legislature?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I mean, there are very strong differences between Democrats and Republicans on a lot of issues, and everything from the redistricting fight and the special session not too long ago to issues dealing with people's fundamental rights and civil rights and voting rights. I mean, there are very strong differences and vigorous debate. I will say that there is, though, a certain level of civility and a camaraderie where I have found Democrats and Republicans are able to work well together in on the state level and in the legislature. So it's not necessarily as divisive as maybe things are in DC. And I think, with DC, I mean, for a whole range of reasons, but there's just maybe a little bit more, not maybe, there's more of a spotlight on what happens. And then it becomes more polarized. On the state level, there are some very real things that are very troubling that Republicans do. There are ridiculous bills that they pass. I mean, one is that I point out, I mean, that we just wasted so much time on was changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America in state documents. I mean, just stuff like that we could be spending time debating and talking about. How do we raise teacher pay? How do we keep hospitals open? How do we, like you said, expand access to mental health and telehealth services? So there are real differences and things that are very, very troubling about what the Republican supermajority pushes for and what they pass. But I will say, on a more personal level, there is I don't think it's as divided as things are on the federal level, and there is a way to work together, and I've done that on a range of issues. I worked to lead the effort to ban Glock switches, which turn handguns into machine guns. I did that by working with Republicans and appreciate their openness. I worked on a law, dealing with the condition animals or pet dogs are subjected to, and did that by working with Republicans. I worked with the education budget chairs to secure funding for a conflict resolution program to help teach young people how to deal with conflict in a nonviolent way. So I have found that there are strong differences, but we are able to work together and get some things done as well.
In that vein, you're also, I think, pushing for the repeal of permitless carry. It's hard to believe that became law for me, who's never owned a gun. But that's because of the way I was brought up. We weren't around guns. Do you think there's data out there that changing the gun laws along the lines, particularly the permitless carry has an actual uh, possibility of passing to reduce violence in Alabama?
Yeah, so law enforcement, as I'm sure you know, I mean, they were overwhelmingly opposed to,
I know.
doing away with permits, and for Republicans to say that they back the blue and we have to support law enforcement, I mean, they completely ignored what law enforcement wanted or in this situation, and that was to keep permits. And the reason for that is that permits they're not going to stop all gun violence, they're not going to stop every crime, but it's a reasonable measure. I say this all the time. The way that you need an ID to vote, you need an ID to get on an airplane. You're required to provide proof of who you are, or provide proof of ownership of a car if you have a vehicle. I mean, there are all sorts of things that we do in society as reasonable requirements for owning something or partaking in something. So a permit for owning a firearm is very reasonable, particularly when it's a tool that law enforcement say would help them. So, I have heard from different police chiefs and sheriffs that it has made their job harder, that right now, it's what they've described as the Wild West, that anybody,
Yeah.
now can just carry a firearm without any sort of real, concern or worry about whether they should, are abiding by the law or not. So, I do think there's evidence out there to show that it has made public safety worse off, and that it has made the job of law enforcement harder. And I would hope that evidence is compelling to allow for the permitless carry to be repealed. I know that is a huge uphill battle, and I know once the legislature passes something, it's hard to go back and have them redo it, because that, in certain ways is admitting that they did the wrong thing. But we absolutely should try. We absolutely should continue to push for it. I've worked closely with law enforcement on, Democrat and Republican, and certainly will continue to do that. And we shouldn't give up until we do repeal it.
Well, you have flipped a seat in the legislature, and you're now trying to flip a seat at a different level. How do you plan to do that?
Yeah. So
I know in interviewing Doug, I know there were some tremendous uh, statistics that came out of the primaries regarding percentages of voters that actually turned out. And from my point of view, I would like people to just let me say this. Will you get off the sofa and go vote? Really, just vote, because the low turnout just really nauseates me on many levels. And I don't know what drives that apathy. I really don't. But in any event, you got to turn a seat from what's been historically, well, in the beginning of times, historically always Democratic. Now it's gone completely the other direction in my lifetime. So, what's your game plan there?
Sure. So, look, a few ways we go about it is having a compelling message for people who vote regularly, but yes, to especially reach those who maybe don't always get out and vote. And that message is one that's focused on solutions, focused on putting more money in their pockets, focused on, as we've talked about, protecting hospitals and strengthening public education and having safe neighborhoods. So talking about the things that help move our state forward, and talk about what people are going through every day. So a strong message is a big part of it. Another way we go about reaching people, those through a 67 county precinct by precinct field operation. And that's down to the very local neighborhood level of knocking on doors and making phone calls, and, not just doing it a week or two before the election, but doing that all throughout the summer and throughout the fall. and Doug and I and the rest of the Change Ticket are coordinating closely on that effort. There's another complementary effort to reach low propensity or infrequent Black voters. So those who maybe only vote in every 1 out of 4 or 5 elections, really targeting those voters through churches and community groups and community events. And that will also help with turnout. But look, Republicans are also they're digging their own, making things harder by just focusing on all sorts of nonsense and sure, there's still the MAGA base, but there are a lot of Republicans and independents that are turned off by that. So the way we win is by having a very reasonable message and show that we're the party that's actually focused on doing what's best and right for Alabama. And all of that will take a lot of work. It certainly takes donations so we can get our message out. But I'm committed. I'm one of those. Once I'm in it, I'm giving it, 1,000%. And I'm, like I said, every day in a different county and meeting with people where they are. And, it's going to continue to take a lot of work. But that increase in Democratic primary turnout, the drop in Republican turnout, if you look at historical trends of, the change from primaries to general elections as far as turnout, the numbers add up that we can win as Democrats, and Doug is, as governor, and me as lieutenant governor, and even others like Ron Sparks as agricultural commissioner. And I know we have Violet Edwards running for state auditor, and Ross Houston for state treasurer, and Jeff McLaughlin for attorney general, Wayne Rogers for secretary of state. There are lots of great Democrats running statewide, and, we're going to keep giving it our all.
Well, that's what you have to do. For folks that are listening out there that care about justice and opportunity, but don't plan to run for office, what's something they can do that you'd like them to do this year where they live to help you get elected?
Yeah, so appreciate you asking that. So those that are listening, and yeah, running for office is not for everyone, but we need your help to have good people in there. And the ways you can do that, or you can go to my website. It's philipensler.com. It's Philip with 2 L's, and you can sign up to volunteer, and that's to knock on doors or phone bank. You certainly can make a financial contribution online through the website. That helps tremendously, so we can have a good team and get our message out and advertise. So going to my website is one way. You can sign up in a variety of ways, but then also word of mouth, and whether that's informally by just talking to people and encouraging them to get out and vote and to support us, but also through social media, using everyone has a little bit of a platform where they can reach family and friends and other people, and just posting some supportive, helpful things, that makes a difference as well.
Well, it's been a pleasure spending some time talking to you. If you're going to be a moving target for the next several months. So I suspect you're moving about daily and constantly in the life of trying to run for a statewide public office, particularly as a Democrat. I am confident it can happen, and I wish others would feel the same. And I think if they will just turn out, we can make a difference, and perhaps we can turn that around, that trend that we're currently living in around. I haven't seen any TV ads out yet. I know it's too soon probably, but just promise me you won't have a shotgun off in the corner somewhere.
I will not have a shotgun and be pandering. And look, I mean, it's, some of these TV ads are ridiculous and nauseating. I mean, we had,
I agree.
My ads will talk about, what I've done to help improve people's lives, what we can continue to do. And I know that may not be the most compelling, for clickbait and something that's gonna be the sexiest of ads, but it's like, we got to focus on helping people and doing what's right. And that message, I really do believe will resonate, and completely agree with you that we can win in November. And, I appreciate you helping get the word out and being so thoughtful and, having this platform to be able to share with people in the state.
I just hope that, for years, Alabama has sort of been looked at, and I don't mean to offend redheaded people, but there's an expression, a redheaded stepchild. That's what I feel like the rest of our country looks at Alabama as. I think we're important on the national level, and we can make a difference in the outcome of important issues that all of us are affected by. And it's time to, we always used to say, well, thank God for Mississippi. I don't think we need to be in the position. We have bright young people like yourselves that are perfectly capable of running the show, running the state, for lack of a better expression. And if we can just get them out there to vote for you. So I'm glad you spent some time with me. I wish you best of luck. If there's anything you'd like to say in closing, please have at it.
Yeah, no, thank you. I just want to say thank you again for having me, and to everyone out there. I appreciate the support, and yeah, let's win this in November and show that Alabama is going to move forward. We can create a state that works for everyone. We don't need to be the laughing stock of the country and at the bottom in so many important categories and measurements. And like you said, we can have leaders in there that are going to do the right thing and do things that are based in evidence and fact, and not some of this nonsense we've been dealing with. We can and we will do better. So thank you so much.
Well, I thought of something else before you hang up. Everybody fears that we're going to become socialists or communists. Where does that come from? I mean, that's not what we're talking about.
We're not, and it's just it's fear mongering rhetoric.
I was about to use the same expression.
Yeah, and it's used to just, the people that call Democrats communist, socialists, Marxists, they don't even, if you ask them the difference between a communist and a socialist, they don't even know the difference, and they conflate the two. And I'm not advocating for that at all. Doug's not. We want reasonable things that are gonna empower working people, help the middle class, help farmers. We're not talking about any of that extreme stuff, and that's just used to try to scare people. But I think more and more people see through that kind of nonsense, and it's just a fear tactic.
God bless you, Phil. Best of luck to you in your future endeavors to become the next lieutenant governor of the state of Alabama.
Thank you, Tommy. God bless you as well.
That has been The Real Truth. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me today on The Real Truth. My name is Tommy Spina. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. I hope you will follow or subscribe to my podcast and listen in to the next episode. If you found it valuable, please take a moment to rate it and review it. It helps us to reach more listeners that care about the issues that matter. Share it with a friend. Stay engaged, and remember, the truth matters. I'll see you next time.